A week really is a long time in politics. Thanks to David Littleproud, current, as of recording this anyway, leader of the National Party, I've started and scrapped this damn video half a dozen times, I reckon. So let's just let this serve as a time capsule. After being demolished at the 2025 election, you may have found yourself wondering, had the coalition hit rock bottom? On the 20th of May, David Littleproud had the answer for you. Nope, not even close.
This morning, after the discussions that both Susan Ley and I have had over the ensuing period, our party room has got to a position where we will not be re-entering a coalition agreement with the Liberal Party.
Are you breaking up with me?
Those positions that we couldn't get comfort around a nuclear being part of an energy grid into the future, about the Regional Australia Future Fund, a $20 billion fund paying a $1 billion dividend every year above and beyond, to change the lives of regional Australians, about employing and training some doctors, to actually filling in some potholes, to actually giving young families the hope of childcare. It's around divestiture powers for supermarkets. What we are saying is that what we secured in the former coalition are policies that should remain. We don't want to have to look back and to waste energy on trying to re-prosecute the case.
Now, given the result of the election, you'd think some self-reflection might be in order, but nah. It's clearly not on the agenda for the Nationals.
A reasonable request was put to a trusted partner and it was refused. Policies that we had fought for, that only a few weeks ago we fought an election on. Policies that in the main, rural and regional Australia backed.
Did they though? It's not like the Nationals saw a massive uptick in support this election. They wouldn't appear to be winning the hearts and minds of too many new voters. If the Nationals are viewing the 2025 result as a big win because they didn't hemorrhage as many seats as their coalition partner, then they may be a little delulu. The reality is, by and large, the Nationals sit on some of the safest seats in the country, but they're not actually appealing to new voters. To sit back and say,
well, we weren't the problem, it's not our fault the coalition lost,
is just delusional. I mean, sure, they can do that, but if they do, they should plan on being on the periphery of Australian politics for a long, long time.
Now that you've exited the coalition agreement, have you just made both parties irrelevant and never forming government ever again?
The answer is yes.
No. This is a mature conversation that both Susan and I had around their need to rediscover who they are and what they want to be.
It's going to be a real eat, pray, love kind of journey for me.
I don't intend to take a step back when I've taken some big steps forward in 3 years. I want to build on that, not have to expend energy in trying to rebuild it. I think we can and will work well together when the Liberals decide what they want to be in much of the capital cities they want to be able to prosecute their case in. My job is not to be a drag on their vote. And I've got to say, I never saw a billboard, I never saw a piece of material from the Labor Party attacking me or the National Party at the last election. The National Party didn't drag anyone's vote down in the capital city because we were able to focus on the things that are important to us.
I'm not so sure that's true, Mr. Littleproud. If the National Party were the driving force behind the nuclear policy, then yes, the Nationals were a drag on the Liberal Party vote.
We're very clear about who we are and why we're here. I get to leave a legacy.
No doubt about that.
I actually think it is conceivable that she can win the next election.
Are you for real? Is he for real?
Susan Ley will be the next Prime Minister.
You what, mate?
For most people watching on, this whole thing had clown show written all over it. Jim Chalmers, I think, summed it up quite nicely.
Well, this is a nuclear meltdown, and the coalition now is nothing more than a smoking ruin. They are hopelessly divided on personalities and on policy.
Then Spreadsheets Mackenzie popped up on Sky to say that despite what everyone had heard hours earlier, the Nationals hadn't left the coalition. It was the Liberals that had left.
We have not left the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party left us.
That's not what it sounded like earlier today. It sounded like you and David Littleproud saying we're out.
Oh, well, we are. If they can't agree to these 4 policy propositions, which they can't, and that was made clear to us, our room and our leadership team has said, well, we will represent rural and regional Australia without you.
It's the Liberals doing, though, you're saying, because they...
Well, it's a decision for them.
This is a mess.
Well, we don't think it's a mess. We think in some ways it's quite clean.
When Susan Lee appeared on 7:30, she highlighted that Cabinet solidarity was a sticking point.
We were being asked to adopt policy positions before I went through the process that I committed with my party room to undertake. In the discussions I had with the Nationals, I wasn't confident that shadow cabinet solidarity would be maintained going forward. We can't have a situation where members of the shadow cabinet sit on different sides of the parliament in different votes. And I don't believe that the coalition agreement itself should be hostage to individual policies.
And you know, credit where credit's due. Lee came off sounding quite sensible and reasonable, I thought.
We got a catchphrase though. Say it!
We remain committed to having the door open.
The door will always be open.
James, we're respectful. The door remains open.
Our door as a Liberal Party remains open.
Our door is open.
The leader of the Liberal Party decided to put all of our policies that only 3 weeks ago we fought an election on suddenly up for review. There were some of those that we believe shouldn't have been dealt in that manner.
Is it not a reasonable enough position, though, after such a thumping defeat, to put all your policies out there and say, hey, we're going to take our time and review them?
Sounds reasonable.
Well, the reality was the coalition was handed an historic defeat, James, but the National Party within that held all of our seats.
Shooter's not quite right with that one. The Nationals did lose a seat, and like I said earlier, they didn't exactly see a massive increase in support either. But yeah, Shooter was still running the line that it was not me, it was you.
It's not you, it's me!
And cut price ScoMo, he wasn't mad, he was just disappointed.
I think it was more than disappointing that the National Party took the decision yesterday to break away from the coalition. Well, I think it really came down to two key things, James. Firstly, the process of policy formulation, and secondly, the issue of shadow cabinet solidarity.
Then Spreadsheets Mackenzie appeared on 7:30. At this point, the Nationals were still saying that the split had nothing to do with cabinet solidarity, but then there was a plot twist.
I was in the party room on Monday. I was also in the party room last Friday. The National Party party room gave its leadership team the imprimatur to get a guarantee from the Liberals as a first gate, if you like, to continue coalition negotiations about those 4 policies. We couldn't, by Monday, get that guarantee, and given that, our party room only took into consideration in making its decision that principal position on those 4 policies. So they made that decision based on the information they had at that time, which was verbatim from the Liberal leader.
Are you saying Susan Lee is not telling the truth when she says one of the key issues was a request from the Nationals that they not be obliged to maintain shadow cabinet solidarity?
So, Sarah, I can tell you because I was in the National Party party room that made this decision, the decision which was then conveyed to the Liberal leader, and that was not part of our consideration.
Now, as that interview played, we've just received a note from Susan Lee's office saying it is not correct to suggest that shadow cabinet solidarity was not a sticking point, and they, that is Susan Lee's office, have that in writing.
Damn! Littleproud then popped up the next day.
Did you issue a set of impossible demands to Susan Lee that she couldn't possibly agree to?
No. The only sticking point that we have are the 4 policy points.
The Liberals say you also asked to be able to speak out against shadow cabinet positions. Is that true?
No, there was a range of requests as well as shadow cabinet positions that were sent in writing to Susan Lee, and she sent back a response, and her response around cabinet solidarity was satisfactory and reasonable and fair, and one that I accepted. So it wasn't up for debate in our party room because I believed what she sent back was more than reasonable. So the only points of conjecture were policy that were debated and predicated our decision around the coalition. So there were many other points that came back, but those were the 4 that our party room debated because I made a decision that what Susan had sent back was reasonable and fair.
So it sounds like Littleproud may well have put forward a set of demands that had not been socialised with his party room, which really dialed up the spice level.
Did you ask to be deputy leader?
There's a range of things. I'm not going to go into that. I don't think that's something that should be aired in public. These are private negotiations between Susan and myself, and I don't intend to enter into commentary.
I think in political speak, that might be as close to a yes as you're going to get. Let's be real, if you hadn't put that demand forward, it would have been far easier to say no and just move on. Dancing around it like that, well, you're free to make up your own mind, I guess.
Let's speak about this letter that's been published in News Corp this morning, written by Senator Bridget McKenzie to Senator Michaelia Cash. It suggests that you were discussing perhaps a threat, really, to leave the coalition much earlier than it was publicly announced.
Well, I haven't seen those reports, but let me make this clear that no individual determined the position on the coalition in our party room. It is a decision of the collective, not of an individual. Now, if there are circumstances prior that individuals were upset about, that's for them to vent.
But were you planning this? Were you speaking about it a long time before you made that public announcement?
No.
I'm not convinced.
Then, a few hours later, Littleproud and his posse held a hasty press conference in a hallway.
I had a brief meeting with Susan Lee, and she made an offer to reconvene her party room to discuss the 4 policy areas that the National Party demand as part of a coalition agreement, and I thank her for that. And as a consequence, I've decided to send those spokespeople home as a sign of good faith. And Susan, as a sign of good faith, will not be announcing a shadow cabinet.
So you're getting back together?
No.
You will. You know you will.
I have to admit I almost fell off my chair when Phil Corey asked a reasonable question. Pay attention to Shooter's face in the background.
Why didn't you just do this in the first place rather than rush off and just leave the coalition? Why didn't you give her time to have a party room meeting in the
Well, I didn't dictate.
Did you ask her to do this?
Well, with all due respect, Phil, this is a matter for the Liberal Party. I don't have control over the Liberal Party. But I made very clear the process that took place from the very start was predicated on the timelines that Susan determined, taking into account her personal circumstances, and we did not rush this. It was one that she determined, and I respected that, but it was her processes and her party that determined whether they wanted to come together or not. I don't get to tell the Liberal Party they should have a meeting to determine whether they support those policies that we're holding out.
What about on the issue of cabinet solidarity? Is this still a sticking point?
No, and it never was.
Susan Lee seemed to suggest it was disingenuous for Bridget McKenzie to say it wasn't a sticking point.
As I said this morning, that was not taken to the party room because I accepted the written response that I got from Susan, that it was fair and reasonable.
There's been a lot of leaking going on, it would seem, of texts, of letters, of conversations. I don't think it's in anyone's interests for those matters to be leaked because it actually breaches and breaks trust.
A day later, outgoing Liberal Senator Holly Hughes gave Littleproud both barrels.
I think David Littleproud's been found out a number of times this week, but particularly in the fact that he did not give to his own party room the full story when it came to his demands around cabinet solidarity and the request that his shadow ministers would be able to not abide by that. And I think Mr Littleproud is going to have some very open discussions with his own party room regardless of the result.
One day on, news that the two parties were on the cusp of getting back together.
The Liberals and Nationals are considering getting back together just days after a dramatic split of the coalition. The Liberals have agreed in principle to the National Party's policy demands, but the saga may have threatened the future of Nationals leader David Littleproud.
On Insiders, Kevin Hogan confirmed that Littleproud's demand to end shadow cabinet solidarity was not something that had been shared with the Nationals party room.
What about his demand to end shadow cabinet solidarity? That didn't go to the party room, did it?
No, because it wasn't a non-negotiable.
That would be enough to put Littleproud's hold on the Nationals leadership on fairly shaky ground, I would have thought.
This is my leader.
There you go.
And I'm ambitious for him.
Yeah, good on you. Thanks, ScoMo.
Would he have your full support if he was to remain as leader?
I'm ambitious for him.
I am ambitious for David. I want the Nationals to be the best they can be, and he's our leader and I support him.
For most Aussies, the Liberals and Nationals have quickly become the Ross and Rachel of Australian politics.
I thought we were broken up.
We were on a break.
That, for all I knew, could last forever. That, to me, is a break up. I thought our relationship was dead.
Come on!
on? We were on a break. No, we weren't. What happened to you two?
Fact is, you've been flogged. What you put to the public was rejected. Most people would accept that reviewing your policy offering would make sense. And let's be real here, I don't think anyone believes that the sticking point was mobile coverage or a regional slush fund. It has to have been nuclear power and by extension net zero. And it seems pretty clear to everyone that the National Party have been dragged kicking and screaming to accept net zero.
What is the Nationals' position now on net zero?
The National support net zero 2050.
Has that been settled?
Well, that was settled years ago.
So that's not up for review or being changed?
The policy is as it is. The policy is as we took to the election.
The reason I'm asking you personally is because you said just the other night on Sky News that the Nationals had drunk the net zero Kool-Aid.
Receipts.
What did you mean by that?
Well, we've agreed to it. We signed up to it. And post that, when we did that, we agreed that we had to look at a policy that works. I mean, I'm not going to prosecute it now because we just lost an election.
But the phrase is, you know, drinking the Kool-Aid, it means blindly accepting something without questioning it.
No, I don't. Well, that's not the way I define it.
Right, so you're right on board for net zero.
Drinking the Kool-Aid is not a term that inspires much confidence. I don't think there are too many people that will have been buying what Hogan was selling there. Then there was the timing. This whole thing felt unnecessarily rushed, when in practice there was no real need for urgency. It looked opportunistic. A new Liberal leader elected on a slim margin, with the Liberal Party having been smashed at an election. From the outside looking in, this looked like an opportunistic power grab from a guy that was overplaying his hand. The circus of the past week, however it ends up panning out in the weeks or months ahead, will not be forgotten anytime soon, and nor should it. This has been a live dissection of the coalition playing out in real time, and it's not pretty. If nothing else, the circus has demonstrated that the coalition weren't fit to govern heading into the last election, and they don't look like they'll be fit to govern for quite some time. I'd suggest that if you want to present yourself as a credible alternative to the government, the coalition's behaviour in the past week or so is really not the way to go about it. But given they don't appear to have learnt from any of their past mistakes, I'm not going to hold my breath to wait and see whether or not they learn from this one.